Hello everybody and welcome to Cabaret Secrets. My name's Gary Williams and today's guest is a jazz and cabaret singer in London. She's performed at all the classic venues like the Vortex, the Pheasantry and the Crazy Cocks. This year she made her debuts at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival and the Metropolitan Room in New York. Nicky Gayner, welcome to Cabaret Secrets.
Thank you, lovely to see you.
It's very exciting. You made two debuts. It was this year, wasn't it, for Edinburgh and New York?
And the Pheasantry. I mean, debuts everywhere this year. I'm a newbie. I mean, it's something that I did in my early 20s, and then I basically stopped when I had my children and have just dabbled a little bit, and then things have come that have happened have meant that it hasn't gone any further, and then health things, all sorts of things have happened. And then this year it was I've been building up to it, but it was suddenly time. I hit 50 this year, and it was just like, okay, if I don't do it now, I'm going to be 80 and still saying, when I do my cabaret show. So it just comes to the point where you feel confident and ready to do it, and then there's something, that little extra kick that comes in, and it's like, okay, do it now. And then all these events unrolled, and I just went with it.
And I mean, had it been a long time in the planning, and because a lot happened this year, presumably you'd spent a year or so really working up to everything happening. It didn't just suddenly happen like magic.
No, I've been working on, I've been singing, working with Michael Ralston, the wonderful, wonderful Michael Ralston, best pianist in London, for some time, and putting a show together.
This was like kind of like practicing with him, just paying him to sort of just practice and just play around with things. And did the show slowly start to sort of, or did you start thinking, I want to make a show, here's a set list, let's practice for a very specific purpose?
I think when I first started working with Michael, it was just to get to know a pianist and work out lots of songs that I'd had in my repertoire for a long time, and really just wanted to be able to really sing, which you can't do unless you've really got a pianist to work with. Yeah. And then I started working on the concept of the show. So the show that I came up with was Empty Nest, because that's the stage of life I'm at. My children are now leaving. My youngest is 21 at university. And so the timing was right for me, and I very much wanted to do a show that had a story to it, that was personal, that showed me as a person, my vulnerabilities, my all sorts of things. And so I came up with the concept of this show, and I spent over a year, in a way, collecting songs, getting lots of material together. So by the time it actually came to really finessing the show and working with the director and all of that sort of thing, I think I arrived with about 100 songs, and then we had to slowly just whittle them out, which was first very easy to do and then became harder as there were lots of songs you could use.
Sarah Louise Young was your director. What was I'm interested, so when you came to Sarah with the idea and with your 100 or so songs, with her help, how did you tackle that? What was the process to get from that to something that was more resembling a proper show?
We had an initial meeting, and I sort of pitched my ideas at her, what I wanted to do. And once we'd agreed that this was going to be a good match and that we wanted to work together, we spent a day together just talking, really, looking at the songs, throwing out half of them immediately, and then just talking about stories. She's very good at drawing out of me. For example, in the show, I talk about one of my sons having a temper tantrum, a really bad one, I should say, and we were just chatting. And at the end of it, she said, "We have to use that. That works. It should go in there." So it was a process of just two friends sitting down having a good old chat and a chinwag. But out of that came little stories that we could say, "Oh, okay, that works. Let's put that in." And then trying to work out the songs so that they go in an order. You can't have all your fast songs in one bit and all your slow ones. You've got to get the right order and tempo of a show. So that... Did
you kind of make a list with the songs? Once you had this, the full list of 100, did you just kind of divide them up into different styles or types?
We put all the final sort of selection that I should think we got down to about 25 songs, were all put on cards. And we lay them out on the floor.
This is Steve Ross's style. I did an interview with Steve Ross, and he does exactly the same. Right. He gets his cards, he lays them on the floor, and then moves them around.
That's exactly what we did. And we had one song that was sort of in the middle of the show, and then we decided, no, it's a fast song. It gets people going. It needs to be right right near the beginning. So we just slightly changed. It's a song called "I Can't Stop Talking About Him," and it's and I can't remember who wrote it right at this second, but it's a very, very fast song, and it's about a man that you're in love with. We changed the lyrics one word. Man to boy, so that therefore it could be relevant to me being mad about my little baby children, and it got the pace of the show going, but right at the beginning. So just by changing one word, we could put it somewhere else.
Was it easy for you to be as honest and as sort of vulnerable as you know that you needed to be in front of an audience?
Yes, funnily enough, I didn't find that too difficult. I think obviously the big difference between cabaret and being on this in a theatre piece is that you are playing yourself. A lot of people find that very, very difficult. But I personally, in this show, I wanted to tell my story, show who I am, and I didn't. It never really worried me that I was showing my vulnerabilities, which I do.
Yeah, and did you? I mean, the chat, the stuff that you say. How did you do it? Was it very tightly scripted, and you just learnt it, or was it kind of bullet points and more free?
A bit of both, in all honesty. It was pretty much scripted, but they were stories that, on the whole, I knew. For example, going back to the story of my darling son having his temper tantrum, I've lived that story. So I don't need to learn it by heart.
Yes.
Every time I tell it, it's slightly different.
Yes.
But I'm just reliving it in my mind, so I don't lose the script of it because I'm telling a story that's actually happened to me. The ones that are harder are where, of course, you've made them up a bit, or you've fudged it a bit. Then it becomes a bit harder, and you have to.
It's always harder to remember lies, isn't it?
Yes.
It's easier just to tell the truth.
Exactly.
What I'm really interested in, I know what a lot of people listening to this are interested in, is how you got from that stage to working at the Edinburgh Fringe, because lots of people, including me, go to the Fringe every year, but just for fun, and we know all about it. And it looks like such hard work. I mean, for years I'd go to Edinburgh Fringe, I'd think, I'd love to do a show here. And then I'd look around and I'd chat to my friends who were doing it and think, do you know what, I think I'd rather just come and enjoy it, because it looks like such hard work and nobody makes any money, or nobody seems to make any money.
No.
And so, my question to you is, first of all, what's the point of doing Edinburgh?
I think for me it was time to make my big break, to do it. This show was ready, it needed to be put on. And by going to Edinburgh, actually, instead of doing one show here, one show there, I only did 2 weeks, I did half the run, but I did 12 shows, night after night after night, which meant that I was learning my craft. I reckon I put 5 years' experience into 2 weeks. I was thrown in completely at the deep end. And it was the best thing that could ever have happened to me.
Did the show change much from the beginning to the end?
Well, I knew it a darn sight better by the end. I mean, I completely breathed it by the end.
Yes.
Because if you're doing a show once a week, it takes you a much, much longer time to learn it. But if you're doing it night after night, you really do learn it.
You're living it, aren't you?
You're living it, but you're also really getting the experience. For me, was the real experience of what are audiences like. I didn't really know before, in a way, and one day can be so different to the next day just by who's sitting in your audience.
And was it a challenge for you to maintain the persona that you wanted from the energy that you wanted to from the stage, when perhaps you've got a real quiet house, or people that might not be as interested as they were the previous night?
On the whole, most of the people who came to my show were people who'd seen it in the programme. They realised it was empty nest. Is it relevant to me? I didn't have 25, 30-year-olds coming in. I had older people coming in who'd picked it out because they thought it was something relevant to them. So, I would look out, and because it's Edinburgh, you don't have great lighting and things, you can actually see your audience. I could see, a woman wiping her tear when I was singing some lullaby or a song that was a poignant song, or somebody laughing if something related to them, what they'd lived with their children.
Did you lose much money?
I didn't make much money, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't a disaster.
It wasn't a disaster, because I've got to look at the long term, and it's what the exposure that I got and what's come from it will pay back in the end. So that's the gamble you have to take. I did the free Fringe, so I didn't have to pay for my venue. I paid my £300 to get in the festival programme, which I think is really important. I think anyone who doesn't do that really is not getting any exposure. You've then got to pay for your flyering, and you've got to pay for your costume, for your props. You've got to pay to get to Edinburgh. You've got to pay for your accommodation and your food and everything. It is expensive. I had a pianist, I had a director, I had to pay them. Rehearsals beforehand. So yes, it was expensive, but as I say, I got years of experience out of it, which I think was worth it just for that. But I've also got other work out of it.
I think that I'm always doing work which is I'm not doing for the money. I'm doing for other reasons. I'm doing it because it's an opportunity for people to learn some new material, or just to meet and work with other people, or to be introduced to somebody that may be able to book me in a different venue. Or in fact, often albums. You ask most people about albums, and I'm just organising now, recording another album. It's going to cost a typical amount for an album of maybe around between £15,000 and £20,000. Am I going to get that back from sales? Probably not. It would take me years and years, but I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it so that it's a good product and I can get exposed. And I think we always have to do this. If we can afford it, if we're lucky enough to be in a situation where we can afford that investment, because we do need to keep maintaining a level of interest from the press and from audience members.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm in a very, very fortunate position in that I've been able to bankroll this little adventure. And I feel very, it's very hard for a lot of people I know to do that. I know many friends who would like to do Edinburgh, and it's not feasible, but I've been able to do it, and I'm very thankful for that. But as I say, a lot of stuff is coming from it, and I think if I hadn't had that exposure, these other things would not be happening, and I'd still be, at a different level.
One of those things is New York, the Metropolitan Room.
Yes.
How did that happen?
That was again just accident. It's people what have you. A great friend of mine, Harold Sanderton, who I know
we know from the Crazy Cocks, the open mic nights,
and you've also done a podcast
yes.
with him. Harold and Michael Ralston were booked in to play the Metropolitan Room in October, and while I was in Edinburgh and I was reporting back to Harold how it was all going, he suddenly had this brainwave of, Michael and I are out there doing a show, and I happen to know that the slot after us is not filled. Why don't you do it? So I didn't hesitate, and I phoned Michael and said, do you want to do 2 shows in New York? And that's how it happened, really. And again, very lucky. I don't have very many friends in New York, but I have a few, and I contacted them all and said, right, rally around all your troops, and I had a pretty good. I had 65 in my audience, which I was pretty pleased.
That's an
about,
audience,
actually.
isn't it? That's
an
enough.
Audience.
And was it very different performing in New York to performing in London?
Yes, I think. Firstly, just because it was very surreal, I was sort of, I suddenly thought, oh my God, I'm in New York. I'm doing my show in New York. But American audiences, with the greatest respect to any of your American listeners, they are different. They laugh at different things. They don't maybe get the self-deprecation that we Brits are very good at doing. So it was interesting because I had a few English friends in the audience, and they would laugh at different things to the Americans. But actually it went down very well. Anywhere in the world, people have children who are leaving home, so they can relate to the subject matter.
Yes.
So I was very pleased with how it went. It was a fantastic experience.
Would you go back to Edinburgh again?
I would love to go back to Edinburgh again. I'd actually like to take this show back to Edinburgh again, and I'm thinking about that now. I think I learnt a lot from the last one. I would take it back tighter, and I don't know. I'm thinking about it now. I've got to work out all the expenses of it, obviously, but
because it's now you've launched yourself to sort of go back and do it again. It's got to be more compelling reasons to do it, isn't it? Because you've sort of gone there, lost a bit of money, you've spent some money. Okay, you've got the benefits from it, but to go back a second time, you're probably going to get fewer benefits but spend the same amount of money. So you've got to justify it, haven't you?
I have got to justify it, and I'm doing that at the moment.
And this is the time to do that. I mean, we're recording this in we are in December now, aren't we? We're just in December, December the 3rd. I mean, when do you need to sort of be talking to the people in Edinburgh to talk about venues? I need to make my decisions
very, very quickly.
So very early next year, in the new year, you need to be talking to venues. And if people want to go to Edinburgh, I mean, where do they start as far as venues? Is there a website that they can? What do they Google to find out where to contact?
Edinburgh Fringe have their own website, and they have a participants area which you can click into and find everything. One of the best things to do is they do road tours. And several people from the Fringe Society come down to London. They do it in Edinburgh and London, I think maybe in Brighton as well. And they come and do road shows, and they tell you everything that's going on, and you can ask questions and meet people, and that's quite.
But it is a matter of if I've got a show and I want to go there, am I going to have to spend hours on the phone trying to track down whoever I've got who runs a venue, and I've got to beg them to let me have a show and find it? I mean, is it going to be just really hard to find a venue and find anybody that's interested, or is it sort of a more straightforward procedure, particularly with the free fringe? Is that can I send a couple of emails and submit what I've got to submit and then get an approval or not? How difficult is it? Do you really have to know people?
Good question. I had an introduction to the new free festival, which is called Freestival, and I had an introduction. I contacted them. I sent them an email. I sent them a show reel, told them what my show was about and everything, and they came straight back and said, yes, go ahead, lovely to do it. I think for other venues, it's harder. There are four main organisations that are
the Pleasance is one.
Pleasance, Gilded Balloon. I'm having
and the others,
Underbelly, whatever others. I think for them it's harder because I think more people want to go with them. So if you want to go with Underbelly, you've got to go through a process.
You've probably got to have a proven track record. If they're going to give a valuable slot, they want to give it to somebody that's going to have an audience.
Record, you've got to have reviews. You've got to have show reels. You've got to have. In a way, they're going to interview you. They're not going to.
Your show reel. Did you feel that even at your stage, when you were your first outing? I mean, how did you get a show reel? Because you hadn't done it much before, had you?
No, but anything that I'd done, even if I was, at the Crazy Coqs doing Harold's wonderful open mic evening, you can still record it on your iPhone, and you can put something together. I made my show reel myself just on my Mac.
Just get a friend to hold the iPhone, and it's true that we don't have to spend a fortune. And
my show reel cost me nothing.
And you see, people. A bit of your show reel performing at the Crazy Coqs. Nobody knows that it's an open mic, and you haven't, that all those people haven't come there to see you. It's just you doing what you do, and you see the audience reaction, and that's what you do. You just used iPhones and picked up whatever footage you could and spliced it together on iMovie, and that was enough.
That was absolutely enough. I mean, yes, it's not as professional as some of those show reels out there, but it's done the trick.
What would you do differently?
I don't think I really would have changed anything.
What about the flyering? Did you do that yourself, or did you hire people?
A bit of both. I did do it myself. It was terrifying to start with, but you soon get into the swing of it because everybody's sort of doing it. I wrote my husband in when he came up for a week, and he was brilliant. I think he was the oldest flyer out there. It's mainly students, and there was this older man going around handing out flyers. But actually, if you engage with people and they then see your picture on the flyer, they're interested. They want to chat to you and they talk to you. And I got quite a few people. Actually, I then recognised who came to the show.
Did you find it was better, more effective to try and engage them, have a little chat with them, rather than just shove a flyer in their hand?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sort of quality, not quantity.
Absolutely.
And that's something that people, when you're paying them, they can't do that the same, can they?
No, I mean, I did have also some sort of young students who were did some flyering for me, and I made sure that I went and met all of them, and I said, don't bother handing the flyer to a 30-year-old. They're not going to get this show. Find slightly older people, and and they did very well for me. I was in a venue, it was called Fingers Piano Bar, which is it's in the new town, and it's on the outskirts of really where the Fringe is going on. But I had audiences, where we were pretty full every day.
Hard to say where they come from, isn't it? So your educated guess was that the flyering was worth it?
The flyering made a big difference.
Even when you were paying other people to do it?
Even when I was paying other people to do it. One day, one of the girls who was meant to be flying for me was sick or something and didn't turn up and do it, and there was a distinct lowering of people in that day. So yes, I do think the flyering was the most important thing, and not necessarily doing it on the Royal Mile. I stuck to my area, so go out an hour before your show around the area where your venue is, so that you're getting somebody coming out of a restaurant or a coffee shop or something.
Any more ideas for the new year to capitalise on what a successful year you've had already?
Well, I think the most exciting thing that really has come out of Edinburgh for me was, and again, this is something that you don't know that's going to happen, but a Norwegian producer came in and watched my show. He came over from Norway to see lots of shows, went and saw them all, and he contacted me at the end of the show, and we met in London, and I'm off to Norway in March to play in 9 different cities.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Which is really exciting.
And that's the value of performing in Edinburgh.
That's completely the value of performing in Edinburgh. I mean, how would I have ever got a tour in Norway?
Thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been great, and good luck with everything that's going to happen to you in 2015.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Cabaret Secrets podcast. If you've got any comments or questions, please visit cabaretsecrets.com, where you'll also find details of the Cabaret Secrets book, an indispensable guide on how to create your own show, travel the world, and get paid to do what you love.